however long I set it. That's okay, right?
What,
That's not,
what are we talking? What kind of machinery are we talking about?
we're talking about my Instant Pot. I got it out and I got it started before Shabbat, and it was set to go for like 19 hours and, keep things warm and stuff. And so it was slow cooking. That's okay, right?
You mean like a crock pot?
Yeah.
Yeah, the crock pots are we'll learn more about that when we get to the next section about more modern machinery. But the crock pot is permitted on Shabbos. There's different opinions of how to use it. I think you could be talking about something else. I think I remember this before the crock pot. Is it like a a kind of machine that a pot that's is it two pieces or one piece?
It's two pieces. The inner piece comes out, but I
Ah,
don't remove it. I just left that in there and I served myself out of the crock pot, out of
so
the Instant Pot.
so that's not allowed. To serve yourself out of the crock pot while it's still in the burner or whatever
The heating source.
heating source, that
Okay.
it has to be removed. So let's say you're taking out whatever it is, taking out soup or chicken or fishes, I don't know, whatever you're cooking in it. So we're going to learn when we get there. That's part of what we're holding last week of you're taking it while it's on the fire. So what we have
Okay.
to do is you would if it's removable. If it's not removable, then it's a problem because then it's cooking in the machine. That's why I asked you. I think if I remember correctly, in the 70s or 80s, they had something that plugged him at a single piece, but the crock pot was a two-piece. And
Right.
even the two-piece we have, according to most opinions, you have to put like a silver foil lining in to make like a blech within the crock pot, because crock pot is different than a regular blech, which is what we're going to learn right now in law
Okay.
number 21 about the idea of tatmana, when something's totally immersed in something. So what you would have to do going forward is, without removing the top, because once you remove the top, it's and while it causes the flame kind of to reignite. Without removing the top, you would carefully remove it from its heat source. Place it on if you don't plan on putting it back in, so you could just take it off and put it on wherever you're
It's
putting it and take out it. If you want to put it back in, so you could continue eating hot food throughout the Shabbos, you would have to not let it settle on any kind of surface. So it has to support on surface, that I understand. So what people would do is, let's say you take out the pot and you're holding it, let's say with your left hand, if you're a righty, while it's kind of supporting itself on the base is supporting itself on a countertop or table. And then while not letting it rest really, so it's kind of still out of the pot, but not settled on a surface. You'll use your right hand with to remove the top, and then take, let's say, your spoon or ladle, whatever you're using, to remove the food. So everything's prepared, meaning to say you have your plate prepared and your spoon or spatula, whatever is prepared before you remove it from the crock pot. Take out the foods that you want, put it on the plate, cover it first, because you can't cover it once it goes back into the heat source, and then put it back onto and even that is not we'll learn how simple that is. To remove something, to put something back in is harder, because once it removes, the heat kind of goes down. And also depending if it's a solid or a liquid. The rule is ein bishul acher bishul. There's no recooking even for liquids, and that's why we're
well, the insert is not something I can take out.
no.
I mean, it comes out, but it's metal and it stays in there. And there's no way I could remove it to take it out
So it
to
is. So it is
serve it.
so it is a single pot.
Well, no, because the metal stuff that you cook in,
If you want to
excuse
clean,
me,
when you clean it, right? When you have to clean the pot after Shabbos, right? Is it
yes.
to get cleaned with its electric cord attached to it?
No, the metal thing comes out so I can clean it, but there's no way of lifting that out.
Oh, you say it's too heavy.
There's no handles on it.
So how do you
I
take it out when you want to? How do you take it out when you want to clean it?
I have to empty it. I have to empty it completely so I can take that metal thing out to clean it.
Yeah, so then you have to, then that's not so simple. You'd have to today you could get online. Hold on, Aaron. Today you could get online different types of, there's different sizes in crockpots, very large for commercial or large families or large ashul, let's say.
I have a small one for 2 people. I can try to send you the link if you want.
Yeah, you have small ones, but they're usually an earthenware, that can handle the heat, that is removable. It's not, listen, they don't make it for Shabbos, at least not ones that I've seen. So it's not exactly made so you could take it out and hold it. So you have to kind of
Right.
be, have all your parts prepared, the towel and all that. It'll be hot. It doesn't have like a handle that doesn't get hot. But that said, in order to while it's in the flame, you can't open it up and take the food out.
Okay. All right.
Aaron, you wanted to ask something before we start?
Yeah, you were saying right hand, left hand. Does it matter what hand you use?
No. I'm just saying I'm just using it in your skills if you want to figure out how to do it. So if you're righty, you're going to have better use out of your right hand to use the spatula and the spoon and that. So the left
Okay,
hand.
because there's a lot of things that matter, which hand, which foot.
No. Nothing. This is not putting on tefillin or saying the Shema or washing your hands. This is not halachic. This is just convenience. If you could figure out to do it with your right hand and spoon out with your left hand, that's fine too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's learn Law 21. This is a perfect question because of what we're talking about pretty much now. Not the crockpot, but the idea of hatmana. Hatmana is the laws of, again, the crockpot is not exactly the same as a hot plate. A hot plate is, it's being inserted inside. There's different people, different things. Well, we're going to go through all the different laws of using the crockpot. Some people are more careful. They'll prepare like small golf balls in silver foil to put at the base, so it doesn't really sit properly down because of what we're going to learn now. Okay, it's like this.
What does Hatmana mean?
Hatmana means to hide or let's see the English word he uses. Doesn't need to. Matmin is to hide or it's covered up. So if something is covered up, is like if you were to put a crock pot, it's hidden it's surrounding the heat is surrounding from from 3 sides, right? From the bottom and from the sides on the side and all the sides are covered in the heat. So it's like matmin is like to hide something or to place something. So a matmin kafe. Kafe is a liquid, right? Coffee. So here it says Erev Shabbos, when you want to put a pot of coffee into a hole of ground. So today we have again the hot water sources that we use for tea and coffee. So we spoke last week about how you make the tea or coffee, but there's one condition before that. You have to actually have hot water. Now, any hot water system that you have that is not directly Shabbos proof, you have to make sure you can use it. There's a lot of questions about, for instance, we know about the question of using hot water to wash dishes, not because it's of the hot dishes of washing the dishes as much as the problem of today our boiler system works that as you take out water, you put it fills itself up, right? It's not an endless pot of a furnace of hot water. So it has to, as you're draining the hot water, cold water is going into the unit to heat up, and you're causing heating up water on Shabbos. Yes, Rebecca.
Sorry if it's like kind of on your topic, but slightly off. I learned that if you live in a large apartment building, you can wash your hands with hot water, with warm water on Shabbos. Is that correct?
And what reason did they give?
Because it's like if you live in your own house, if you turn on the hot water, you're making the fire go on in the boiler. But if you live in a huge building with a lot of people and you use some hot water that's in the tank, you're not causing the boiler to go on because it's like a huge boiler and lots of other people are doing laundry and using the shower and whatever at the same time.
What about the hot water there's 2 questions here. There's the boiler going on and there's the cold water turning to hot water. What about that?
How does if you're using if your sink has 2 faucets, how does the cold water turn?
I'm saying is let's say the building has a 100-gallon hot water tank. Every time you run hot water, So you're emptying the tank and new water's coming in to fill in the gap.
So you're saying you're causing water to be boiled?
Yeah, now it could be their thinking is that if you're living in a building, hold on, Aaron, I see your questions coming up. You have a hot water. You're living in a building where there's a majority of Gentiles.
Right.
Then
Exactly.
it could be different, because then anyways the water is being recycled and you're not. It could be that's their thinking, or the system is different, or the furnace works in a different way. Some people say it's not something that you want to happen. There's a lot of questions about the hot water going into the furnace to reheat. You have no interest in that, and you never want to use that water, especially if it's a huge tank. You're not going to really, it's kind of bottled. There's a lot of questions that are asked about that. The once was a theory, and after we have to learn together. We're learning these laws together to learn the laws of if you leave the hot water running, it's okay. That's only your issue of the boiler, but it doesn't help the issue of the cold water filling the gap of the hot water. Yes, Aaron.
Okay, two things. First, just to say something about what she said. My rabbi once said, if I heard him correctly, if it's not a boiler, because that's a problem, as you mentioned, it's instant hot, and you're in a big building, so they're not heating the water for you.
Hold on, Aaron. What do you mean instant hot?
I mean, there's a little tube, and as soon as it hits the tube, it's instantly hot. It doesn't go in a boiler and start a fire.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that.
I can't explain it to you. I'm no expert in this, so I'll try to find out for next week. But something where, and I know I've seen it, you could buy it for your house. Doesn't mean you could use it in your house. Only when you're in a big building, I think. But it just runs through the tube and becomes hot. But my real question was, okay, so my brother-in-law lives in Israel, my wife's brother, and he gives his kids showers that are warm. And the reason he gives is because in Israel, you heat your water with the sun on the roof. And so it's permissible.
That's called the dud shemesh in Hebrew. The dud shemesh is the solar heat. The problem with the solar heat is that, again, you're getting rid of the issue of causing the boiler to go on, but you're not getting rid of the issue of causing cold water to become hot.
So, but he gives it to his kids. I don't think he takes a shower, and he's very religious.
I know, again, there are opinions that say you can. It's something we have to look into. We'll learn it all together about the question of using the dud shemesh on Shabbos. But the fact is, if you just want to go through the basic math of it, is unless he turns off his dud before Shabbos,
What does that mean?
he turns that before Shabbos, he fills up his tank, which is on his roof, and he doesn't allow any new water to come in. I don't know the mechanics of that, if that's possible, because it could also ruin the machine if an empty machine is sitting there. But if they have maybe a way to turn off that it shouldn't refill itself throughout the Shabbos, that's something else. Then it's like having a what do they call them? A hot water bottle. When you keep coffee hot.
Yeah.
What is it called?
An
Furnace?
A thermos.
What?
An urn.
Urn.
Urn. An urn that's not connected by electric. That is just like, it's just so then the hot water is just sitting there, and if it's not filling with cold water, it could be that's what happens. I have to check. It could be that these dud shemeshes don't get filled on Shabbos. They could set it that way, and therefore there's a big tank of water, and whatever's there you can use, and once you finish, you finish. And then on Motzei Shabbos, and after Saturday night, you refill the dud. It could be that's how the dud shemesh works. Then it's not a problem because you're not refilling the dud on Shabbos. Rebecca, yes.
Yeah. What about what if it's not causing the water to boil? Like it's not getting to Yad Soledas bow. It's just causing the water to get warm. Like, isn't that okay? You're just not allowed to make it boil?
That's different. If it's not going to, that's a different situation. If it's not, I think that's why. Listen, there's some people are, and by the way, this issue would be on Yom Tov. It wouldn't be on Yom Tov. It would be on Shabbos. But this issue would be if you're not making it if it never boils at any point, because by just making your water cold from your faucet, basically turning on the cold water, that's not changing what's going on in the boiler, right? That's just saying how much water, what type of water is coming out of the faucet. I don't know how these, if they can do that, something else. I think if what Aaron's saying is halachically permissible, it could be that the dud on Shabbos, that they've organized it for this specific reason, should not continue to fill on Shabbos, which is possible. It could be the water source turns off before Shabbos. And the dude, which is basically the boiler that sits on the roof and gets heated through, it's a tank. So the tank sits on the roof, and it could be a tank could handle 5-6 showers. So it could be that the tank sits there and you use, like he says, he uses it to give his kids a warm shower, but it doesn't refill itself until Saturday night. All right, let's see how it has to do here with this halacha. Law number 21. Hitzmin coffee. So you want to keep the coffee warm for drinking on Shabbos. So we're not talking about, again, the hot water sources that we have today, the urns that we use today, have to be Shabbos permissible. Meaning to say is that you're not causing every time the water, the boiler itself stays at a certain temperature no matter what, and it's called Shabbos mode. So today you could buy a Shabbos mode urn in most places that you have a switch that turns into Shabbos mode, and that permits you to use the water. And even though people ask the question about the little glass that has that little glass cools down, but that water has been boiled already, so you're not causing the machine to go on. Okay, so let's just learn the basic law. Hitzmin coffee be'erev Shabbos. You heat it up. You made the coffee before Shabbos, and now you hit it to retain the heat for a hot coffee on Shabbos, right? B'tocha guma. So you put it into a pit or a little hole. L'tzarich Shabbos umachseu b'karim v'kedem, and you cover it with cushions that will keep the heat in the cup, in the bottle that you have for the coffee. Shiacham, that should remain hot. Imu matmina b'teicha choil. The problem is like this. What kind of pit is it? If you're covering it and the pit itself is sand, the problem with sand is that sand is moisef hevel. You're causing it to add heat. So you could have a little bit of part of the vessel, the what do they call it? The hot water thing in the sand, but not all of it. When it's totally immersed in the sand, then that's hatmana. You're hiding something in a substance of sand that adds heat. Sand adds heat. I feel, and we'll get to the details in the footnotes. Even if you don't put the entire vessel inside, but only part of it, that you have it sitting partially in the sand, which is adding heat, and the balance that's outside the sand is being covered tightly with other materials that don't add sand, but now there's still the hot water is in a substance that adds heat. Hold on, Aaron, let me just finish the law. And is being covered totally. So it's totally hatman. It's totally immersed in this heating or retaining heating system. This is the basis of the question of the crockpot, right? Because the crockpot is totally in this. It's covered up to the cover. So that's why we have this additional separation people put in the silver foil. The gamza, so then gamza also, that's also prohibited. And this is what one should do. The receptacle that the coffee is in, yatminu rak ad chetzit, only keep it in the sand or in the guma in the hole at half, or ad shlishi or 1/3, bitor chachol, in the sand, which is adding heat. V'hamoiser, and the rest yeh ba'avir, should have exposure to air. V'yitin al haguma daf, and then you could cover. So it's, let's say this, the pit itself covers the entire pot, but the actual this, it's larger and it's only sitting in part sand, and then you could put something on top, but it's not totally being hidden. The idea is that there's exposure to air. V'yitin al haguma daf or yichbal of kli, you put kind of a covering over the top of the hole, or you turn upside down a pot. The point is you're allowing some air between. It shouldn't be totally immersed because it has a foundation of sand which is adding heat. So the sand is something that's adding heat, and there's no exposure to air, and therefore it's called hatman. You're hiding something that's adding heat on Shabbos. But if you leave it in a way that there's exposure, that's why people put in again the balls in the crock pot, so it's a little lifted up. Hold on, guys. It lifted up out of this and has some air space. And then on top of that, you could put something that kind of remains, that keeps the top hot, but there's still some exposure. Yes, Dini Hatmana will be explained later. We'll learn about more of the laws of Hatman, of hiding later, but this is just law, then it's permissible. First, Aaron. Aaron, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, you answered my first part of the question, which was how much can it be buried? My second part, but you're heating up the sand.
No, it's the problem is not heating up the sand. The problem is the sand is a substance that adds heat. It's called.
What do you mean it adds heat? Because if I put a pot in, if I put a boiling pan, pot, whatever, inside the sand is now going to heat up from room temperature or air temperature.
And it's gonna then it's gonna reheat the pot. It goes in a circle. It's a circular system.
So it's okay on Shabbos.
It's not. That's the problem. The problem is that the sand itself becomes now a thing that's adding heat. The sand comes like a kind of a heat system.
So what do? You have to make the air in between.
You have the little air space.
But it still will heat it at some point.
But the problem is not that the heat, because we have a blech also is adding heat. The problem is that it's immersed in the heat.
Okay. So if it's just lying on top, it's totally kosher. If it's inside, then there's the problem.
That's the problem. This is the laws of Atmana, yes.
Okay, got you.
Barbara.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I just have an urn and I boil water to heat that up and then pour boiling water into it shortly before the start. I light Shabbat candles, and that keeps water warm for me pretty much through Shabbat. And so I think that's okay.
If you're talking about a thermos, that's the word I was looking for. If you're looking for a thermos that could hold, let's say, 24 hours heat and it's disconnected from electricity, and the thermos itself is just a kind of material that it's going to retain the heat that long, that's okay. And again, there's Shabbos urns that you have today you could buy. In Israel, in Eretz Yisrael, they sell, so the ones in America that you could buy, maybe I don't know what Aaron would know better what they sell in New York, but the ones in America that traditionally people buy are the pumps. It has a pump and it retains the heat, and it goes into
There's
Shabbos.
a Shabbos mode on those pumps.
Yeah, and then you have also the regular old urn that has just a faucet that also has a Shabbos mode.
I have one. It's just the teakit pot. It's not electric or anything. You pour the hot water in. You're guaranteed hot water until lunch.
Okay,
It's over.
So that's similar to a barber's. Then you have also today just the regular urns like you have that you just put onto you put onto the electric base, and you flip the switch. You could keep that into Shabbos mode as well. But there's again you have to make sure that it's a Shabbos permitted.
It's those turn off. There's a problem leaving them on all day. The one that you're talking about with the kettle, so it has a Shabbos mode, that's safe, and you don't have to worry about it. You stick it on Shabbos mode, it takes care of itself, and then you manually pump it, because when you turn on Shabbos mode, it turns off the electric pump.
Yeah. Let's see the footnotes. What is the problem that Aaron asked the problem? What is the problem with sand? So he says in footnote number 98, sand is called moisif hevel. Moisif hevel means a substance that adds heat. It's not retaining heat, it's adding heat. This is the problem when you're immersing something in something that's adding heat. Such substances are prohibited for purposes of hatmana. If it's hatmana, if it's hidden, as opposed to top. Even on Erev Shabbos, even if you put it inside the sand before Shabbos, lest you place it in hot ash and coal and stir. The concern is that when it's hidden in something that adds heat, that maybe sand is just adding heat, but you may do the same thing if you put it in ash and coal, and then you're going to stir it, and you're going to cause cooking on Shabbos. He quotes the source of this issue from Rashi and the Shulchan Aruch, etc. However, substances which do not add but merely retain heat, which is what Barbara was referring to in the thermos, are permitted on Erev Shabbos if you place it before Shabbos like you do at Barbara. But on Shabbos, you may not make hatmana even in such substance. Rashi says that even if you put hot water in an urn, in a furnace on Shabbos, that's not permitted. Even if the thing is not something that adds heat. And here he says like this. So you're not allowed to put the vessel that's holding the coffee if it's totally immersed in the sand. The author maintains that only total covering, which is hatmana, total covering, is considered hatmana, to hide something. When not on coals, but if the pot is not completely covered, even if it adds heat, even if it's the sand, it may be used on Shabbos to keep food warm once it's thoroughly cooked before Shabbos. Again, it's more complicated to put things in hatzmana, like we learned last week, whether it's partially cooked or not cooked. So here, if it's totally cooked before Shabbos, and that's why, by the way, liquids is the same thing. Liquids, once it's boiled, it's boiled. We all know, as far as health goes, there's the concept of boiled water. Even once you've let it cool down, it's still considered boiled water, and it has the benefits of boiled water. So same thing, the water's already been boiled and the coffee's already been made. Now you're just retaining the heat. Yes, Rebecca.
So I guess Hatzmana is the reason why we don't, like, I know some people do this, but I learned you're really not supposed to, like, if you leave, let's say you leave your oven on the whole Shabbos, so you could put your food in there before Shabbos and then eat it for dinner, like take it out and eat it Friday night. But I learned that you're not really supposed to put food into the oven on Shabbos, like let's say for lunch or something. That's because of Hatmana, right?
I'm not. I think it could be Atmana. There's also people. There's concerns over there. It's similar idea, and also concerns about. I do know. Hold on, Aaron. I do know that they make ovens today that are that have Shabbos mode for the oven.
So then you would be allowed?
Yeah, there's a special Shabbos. Listen, today most mechanics, most electronics, even though they're not just kosher brands, I mean, like, regular Samsung, whatever, they are making fridges and ovens.
Right, I know the Star
Shabbos.
K works with Rabbi Heineman and does that whole thing, but I thought the problem is still Hatmana.
Yeah, I think it's more. I think it's more than that. Tamana, to leave it. Some people will leave a little bit open of the oven if it's a davar moisef hevel. There's the questions, but I know I'm almost 100% certain that they have in sophisticated new ovens. They have Shabbos mode,
Oh, interesting. And also,
and then you have to also remember the light issue and all that.
right, I assume that's how Shabbos mode helps. That's what I thought. Also, like some people on their blech or their hot plate or whatever, they'll put like a towel on or something to like insulate it or whatever. That's also not allowed because of
Well,
Hatmana.
we just learned that it depends how. See, based on what we learned in the Kitzur now, we'll get to the laws more in detail. Based on what we learned in the Kitzur now, the Kitzur says the problem of adding the cushions on top is only if it's immersed in total without any airspace. But if you're going to, no one's going to put a towel totally covering. If you're just covering a little bit on top and there's airspace in between, it's not hatmana. It's sitting on the base of the blech. There's a towel on the top, but there's this airspace in between.
Oh, okay. So you could do that. You can put a towel.
Again, yeah, you have to. We'll check into details to give the psak, but we're not holding there yet. But seemingly it should not be a problem. Again, you have to make sure there's not fire questions, etc. So let's just see footnote number 100.
Well,
So
I just wanted to say
Ed.
one thing to sum this all up. According to the yeshiva that my daughter goes to, she's always brought up, you cook it into, if you can't eat it, then, and Shabbos started, then forget it. Doesn't matter how warm or cold it is. It's got to be cooked enough to even think about using it. You have to cook it.
Again, we learned last week. The question is there's the middle cooking. If it's cooked enough to eat it, and then there's total not cooking where you're not going to touch it because it's too raw. Again, there's all different levels of.
Well, if you put it in before Shabbos started and you leave it there until you're ready to eat it, that's fine. But if you're going to keep it, if you're going to put it in later, like take it off and put it in.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah, we'll get to that. So he says over here, so the problem is if it's covered from all sides. It is not considered hatmana unless so this is what you asked, Rebecca, about the people who put the towels, what have you. It's not, again, you have to be careful to let the towel touch the metal, but I'm talking about halacha-wise. It's not considered hatmana unless all sides are covered, even according to the Shulchan Aruch, which rules that settling a pot on coals is considered hatmana. Means even just putting it on coals is hatmana, not deep into sand. It applies only when the bottom of the pot actually touches the coals. But if it is not, which is like on a blech, which is what you be talking about, Rebecca. The whole pot must be covered to be considered atmana. See Shulchan Aruch 5257. Okay, so if there's the ear space in between, it's not a problem. Footnote number 101. Okay, let's continue. I'm going to just try to finish the chapter, and then we could open up to some more questions. So he just briefly in chapter 72 touches on the laws of cooking, which we learned in chapter in Sif Chaf and Chaf Aleph, whether it is placing it in hot substances or Hatimana. He talks about the coffee, that how you're supposed to make sure that if it's being kept in sand, which is something that's the most of hevel. Again, a thermos that Barbara is talking about is not, unless there's something inside that's most of hevel. But if it's not, then it's okay. And especially, and even today we have the hot water urns, which is okay as long as it has the Shabbos mode. Samach lecha sheikha. Now so this is the Shulchan Aruch goes like the Gemara and the Mishnah. The Mishnah goes with the flow of the day. So we've prepared our food, and now we're ready for Shabbos. So the Shulchan Aruch continues. Samach l'chashecha, as it gets close to being dark on Friday, means Erev Shabbos. Yishol anshe beise b'lashon raka. This is not such easier said than done. Everyone's nervous, so ask your family in a nice tone, in a how does he say it? He doesn't translate it. In a light tone. Hifrashtem es challah. Did you do challah properly? This means if you make bread, if you make challah for the Shabbos, did you separate the challah? And you should let people know it's time to light candles. But again, everyone's nervous and rushing before Shabbos. Dial down the tension. Easier said than done. I just want to say a story that we had in our house this past summer. Hold on, Barbara, where it comes right before Shabbos or right after. I forget when it was. It was after Shabbos. I'm not sure when I found out about it. My wife realized that the challah that she'd taken off from the dough got remixed into the dough, and she couldn't find the challah, so we assumed it went back into the dough, and all the challah that we had was mixed with challah, and challah is truma. Truma it has to be bottle 1 in 100. In long story short, I don't know if we noticed it until after the first Friday night meal, but by Shabbos lunch we had about 20 guests and no challah, because you can't eat the challah and you can't do meiser on Shabbos, and all the challah becomes forbidden because obviously the dough gets mixed up. Yes, Barbara.
So I have a question about separating the challah. I'm one person and I live by myself. 5 pounds of flour to make challah. I mean, I know that's what I need to separate challah. So is that a mitzvah? I know it's a mitzvah to separate the challah, but is that necessary every Friday?
Again, like Rebecca said, there's different ways of doing it. First of all, you can't make the blessing without the amount, which I think Rebecca, you said was 5 pounds, right? So that you can't make the bracha without the amount. You could separate the challah without the bracha. My mother-in-law, my wife tells me, very rarely makes a blessing. But if you want to do the blessing, you have to have the amount. So either
it's 5 pounds, according to my
5
wife.
pounds. So either you're going to make challah not every Shabbos, so some people want to make challah every Shabbos. So you have to decide how you're going to do it. Or Rebecca has the solution. She says, well, people make challah for others and sell them or give them to others as a gift, so you could have both the amount and also not throw out. But if you're going to, if you don't have that solution, or if that's expensive, then the best way to do it would be either to do it once in a while and freeze, or do without the blessing.
Okay, so in other words, I couldn't make the blessing for bread, the bracha for bread.
Yeah, if you can't make the blessing less than the amount.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Just a tip.
Wait. Sorry, I think it might not be clear that, like, Barbara's asking if she makes the bracha hamotzi on the challah.
No. Oh, okay. No. Yes, thank you, Rebecca. I mean the blessing on the hafrashas challah, to take off challah. We're not talking about the hamoisi of eating the bread. We're talking about the bracha of the taking away the challah. Thank you.
Okay, so I can still make the blessing over the
Oh, yes.
challah.
Yeah.
but
That applies to any bread. Thank you for catching that, Rebecca.
Okay, thank you.
On any bread you make. We're talking about the blessing of separating the challah. Yes, Aaron.
Okay, so 2 tips. One I got from a Hasidic woman. She said, once a month, take out 5 pounds, make your challah for the whole month. You said your blessing, so you're going to use all 5 pounds, and then you take out what you need every week and you freeze the rest.
Okay,
Now,
that's a solution, but the thing some women like to make challah every week.
Okay, so then my wife was telling me that they don't have proper challahs, not proper. They don't have the challahs that the Europeans use or the Ashkenaz and Chabad people use on Shabbos in Syria. So in Syria, they use pita, and since each pita is considered a loaf, you just need 2 pitas for your meal. And so that's how they did it, because they didn't really have what we have.
But still 2 pitas, it have to be 5 pounds of dough.
No. I'm not saying that they would say the blessing, but she was saying she's only one person. So if she lives in
that's the question about the size of the bread that you want to keep for the meal, but also like Rebecca said, you can make small rolls as well. I don't know the baker's idea, but maybe if there's a solution of freezing the dough, that then you could kind of do both, because if you freeze,
I hate not to hurt to her, but she said some people don't like the freezing taste. I agree with her. It's always better fresh. Do what you have to do. If you give 5 pounds, you say the blessing. If you don't say it. But the bread's still bread and it's still challah.
Yes, and you still make a mitzvah, and you still do the mitzvah of challah for sure. The mitzvah of 2 breads on Shabbos. So I'm saying if you want to freeze the dough and then bake on a weekly basis, I think there is a concept of frozen dough. I think they sell them when you could buy free.
Oh, you could buy them around the corner. I can walk in 2 minutes to get it.
Yeah. All right, let's continue. Let's see if there's any footnotes here. It says not earlier in the day. Oh, so before dark, he's just pointing out that when should you do it? It's no point in reminding people in a soft tone 10 o'clock in the morning. It's before it's when it's before dark, for they may delay and subsequently forget to do so. So Rashi says that if you do it too early, it's a counterproductive. We're not talking about talking nicely only before Shabbos. You should talk nicely throughout the day, throughout the week, but we're talking about reminding people your family members to do what has to be done to get ready for Shabbos. Okay. Chaya, this is actually an interesting law that has to do with the Alter Rebbe's yahrzeit that's coming up in a few weeks. Next on the 24th of Teves. Tonight is the 16th. Chayav Adam l'mashmesh bebegadav b'erev Shabbos. A person is obligated to examine one's clothes before Shabbos. Koydem chasheich, again before it becomes dark. Im ein machat tachuva behem. Make sure there's no pins or needles attached to them that are removable and not part of the garment. Or you have nothing in your pockets. Even if you have an erev, so carrying is not an issue. However, there may be money, which is an issue. There may be something that's muksa. And therefore you should make sure to remove anything that shouldn't be in your pockets or anything that's at all, if you can't carry on Shabbos, before Shabbos. Okay, so the footnote says like this: you are obligated to do so. He says you must. It means you're obligated. This is this is the expression used in the Talmud as well. The Rambam, Maimonides, too uses such an expression, but the Tur and the Shulchan Aruch, which is later generation, they are the authors of the Code of Law, hold that is a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah, but it's not an obligation. So it's a mitzvah to check as opposed to being an obligation. Footnote number 104, immediately before dark, even if you do not intend to leave the house, the Vilna Gaon says you should check it again, because if it's muksa, it doesn't help, it doesn't make a difference if you're going to leave the house or not. You shouldn't have anything in your pockets. And it happens, by the way, all the time. Someone says, oops, I left my wallet in my pocket, I have $5 in my pocket. Number 5, where there's an erev, you may carry the street on Shabbos, and the details we'll learn in the laws of Erevin, but that still doesn't avoid the problem of something being muksa, forbidden to be touched on Shabbos. Number 106 is something that you may not move on the Shabbos, is what muksa is. I just before we close up and we open for questions, I just want to say that this is the connection to this on the 24th of Teves, the yahrzeit of the Alter Rebbe, that we have a famous, very powerful letter in Igeris called Nefesh Hashvela, the low soul, that was handwritten by the Alter Rebbe. And when he checked his pockets, the Alter Rebbe passed away right after Havdalah on Motzei Shabbos. So before Shabbos, he was checking his pockets like the law is. And in his pocket, he had a small note called the Nefesh Hashvela, which is a very, very powerful idea about our generation not being perfect. Nevertheless, we get the job done. and he took it out of his pocket, and before Shabbos he gave it to his grandson, who later to become the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, and says, "You hold on to this; it may come into good use." It only really got published in the past 50 years, the Nefesh HaShvela, but it's something very powerful, worth learning. I think they have it in English as well. That's just a side note. So this ends chapter number 72. Next week we'll Be'ezus Hashem start 73. Any questions before we complete this class? Yes, Aaron.
Okay, just a thing. So I noticed people in shul. So you go especially on Shabbos afternoon. So if you hang your coat up, your kid could, because they get all kinds of candy and little things to keep them occupied and to keep them happy in shul, so they'll want to come back. And sometimes they stick them in your pockets, in your jackets. So I see people checking their jackets before they leave shul.
Okay.
So if it's
that
not,
is a good tip.
so that's a problem. So
No, that's definitely a good tip. Especially if you live in a place without an Eruv, to make sure, even though you checked before Shabbos, to make sure no one's placed anything in your coat pocket while it was unattended on Shabbos itself.
But now my question is, if you forgot to check, or while you weren't paying attention on your way out the door, your daughter or son has something in their hands and there's no Eruv, or you don't agree with the Eruv, like in Brooklyn, half do, half don't. So what do you do?
Okay, that's the laws of carrying. We'll get into that when we hit that topic. But that's the laws of carrying. What we do when you find something in your pocket, on your person, on you. There's different ways of dealing with it, and it also depends on exactly what is the thing, the article, and its value. That does get taken into account. But that's in the laws of carrying. We'll get to that when we get to those laws.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else? All right, ladies and gentlemen, Yasher Koch for joining, and Mazel Tov. We finished the first chapter. Next week we'll start the next one. Laila Tov, take care.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome.
Thank you.